All right, recording is in progress. So this is the book, Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Did anybody else look at the were you reading the hardback, Tom?
Yes. It's
Yeah,
only in hardback.
Okay. It's got beautiful, gorgeous
Oh, yeah.
illustrations
Yes.
all
Absolutely.
throughout. Just
They're
like
also in the
beautiful
ebook.
pictures. They're in the
The
ebook
ebook
too?
does.
Nice.
And the other thing is sometimes ebooks will like start at chapter 1. So I hope people didn't miss the epigram.
Yeah.
And the dedication were both pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. The dedication I loved. To Gremlin Girls, I would like to tell something inspiring, but the truth is when life closes a door for us, it doesn't always open a window. The good news is that's what bricks are for. It's really great. Yeah.
So you're supposed to read the stuff that happens before chapter 1?
You are. And look at the cool pictures.
You do you, Laura.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I think I can name 3 books I read the dedication on.
I don't read it.
That's really funny. I always read it. Always read the dedication. Always read, especially if the author note is put in this like beautiful format like that. Always read the author note.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. There's a glossary in the back, which is
I never
really
read
funny.
glossaries.
I do. I skim them before I start the
Do
book.
you?
Yeah.
I just feel like if the author can't get it across in the prose, I shouldn't be having to look it up in the back.
Yeah.
What is in the glossary?
There's
Like
a
all
description
the
of the
German
currency. Yeah, there's a
Okay.
description of the currency. There's a description of noble
Monsters.
titles.
Yeah, and monsters and
Yeah, there's the different monsters. I don't know that I learned anything from the glossary that I didn't learn just from the book, just from reading. But it was just interesting to have it back there. Yeah. Most of the words they used that they didn't explain, I felt had context clues. So anyway. Okay, we'll do journal opinions, overall impression. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And what can we learn from it? Does that sound good? Bless those 4 questions.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions anybody wants to throw on the table? I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about more as we go.
I don't remember the questions.
That's okay. I'm going to ask them all again.
Okay.
Okay. General impressions of the book. What did we think?
You got to
Anybody?
call on people.
Robin.
I thought it was great. To be fair, it's been 30 years since I was in that 8 bracket.
Next.
But and it's probably the first YA novel I've read in that time. But I thought it was great. I thought it was very engaging. I thought the writing was both crisp and well explained at the same time. I think my assessment of the theme for the book is that there's always hope.
Nice.
That's my assessment of the theme.
That's a nice theme call.
Yep. And
Yeah.
so I also liked all of the twists and turns, not only at the end and the beginning, but also through the middle. The twists and turns in the middle just kept me going. And so, yeah. So
Nice.
my overall impression is it was a very nice read. It was also a very smooth read once I got over the syntax.
Yeah. It's a little, it's definitely got that fantasy feel to it. All right. Anybody else who had a positive impression of the book want to add to what Robin said? I'm learning from previous book clubs, Mary. I'm learning.
I didn't
Oh
know.
God.
Go for it, Tania.
Tom also.
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, I don't want to hear from Tom.
No.
Just kidding.
How much time have you got?
Yeah.
It was your suggestion, right?
It was.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually really loved the book. I related strongly to Vanya, and I thought she had a great. She was a great character because she was vulnerable but also strong, and she also had flaws. But everything that was great and not that great about her had a reason, especially in her backstory. I really liked the chapters that were like in this fairy tale-esque style. And I thought the language had a really good rhythm. I don't know, I like this, like building and stopping. And I don't know, I
Yeah.
can't explain it, but I liked it.
Nice. It's great. Tom, you want to add anything? You said you also liked it.
I loved everything about it, except I would slim the front end down a little bit, and why everything has to have the sort of Dutch names or whatever they were was a reader burden.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was a reader burden, but oh my gosh,
He froze.
Oh.
He froze.
Man, that was
I
a
loved
terrible time to
the
throw.
character
Okay.
arcs. Okay, I loved the character arcs. I thought they were really full. I thought what Robin said about the twists, there was not a twist that was not set up. Every single twist was there if you were looking for it, and there were tons. I mean, there were
Yeah.
tons, and some of them were introduced in chapter 1 and didn't pay off until almost the end. Or one of my favorites is there's this hilarious scene where she just keeps stealing stuff from Emmerich's pockets and handing it back
Mhm.
Yeah.
He froze again.
to
We'll
him.
just wait. Okay.
And then in the finale, she has used that sleight of hand. Yeah, in the finale, she has used that same trick in a very important way. So everything is set up. I loved it. I also thought, and we can talk about this a lot more, but I thought it was the best depiction of struggling with trauma that I've read in a novel, certainly in a YA novel. And I'm not an expert on that, but I do have we do have a family friend who has trauma, and that sort of repeated undermining of oneself that Vanya does. And a lot of times you see that portrayed as like it happens once and then everyone around them says, oh, we love you, and it's all great. But that happens repeatedly in the book. People try to pull her back into the group and she sabotages herself. And there were some parts that were hysterical, and there was a part that I bookmarked in the middle that was it was the mirror moment. If you study that sort of thing, exactly in the middle of the book, she literally looks in the mirror when she's taken the Auror's tears, she's taken poison that lets her see the truth of everything. And I was really, really moved by that scene. So loved it.
Interesting. All right. People who didn't like the book, I'm going to put myself 50-50. I was right. There's things I really liked about it. There were things that I wish that I didn't connect with, but
You want to expand on that?
No, he probably doesn't.
I will. No, I do. I will, though. I don't want to. We'll get into it. I don't want to take up the time right now. People who didn't connect with the book, what were your overall impressions? Mary, you want to talk?
2/3 into the book, I liked it,
Okay.
but I had to get that far. And there were a couple chapters that were just fantastic. And then the end, I didn't understand. I couldn't keep track of who was from what kingdom and what they were doing and whatever, but it all turned out okay. And that's all I cared about.
Yeah. It has a heist ending where,
Mhm.
like an Ocean's 11 type movie,
Right.
everything falls into place in one very quick motion.
I guess if you're used to reading that genre, you wouldn't have difficulty following the different kingdoms, but I just thought it went too fast or it didn't explain enough
Mhm.
as far as if he did this to whatever they were called, then something else would happen, and the whole bit. But
Yeah, it's an interesting genre. Would y'all call this a fantasy heist? That's what I kept thinking. I was like, this is a heist novel crossed with a fantasy novel. Is how it felt to me.
mhm.
Much like our
Dialogue-
2 book
Yeah.
clubs ago were like a historical fiction crossed with a gangster novel. This one felt like a heist in a fantasy novel.
Right. With a teen romance.
Yeah, there's always a romance in a heist book. Yeah.
Really?
Laura, you're the only one that hasn't gone. Thoughts on the book?
I have no nice things to say about this book.
This is why I love our book club. This is why I love it.
I really wanted to like it. I loved the opening chapter. And then from that point forward, I was just disappointed after disappointed after disappointed. I thought the storyline was predictable. I had a really hard time connecting with it. There were a couple of really great moments. I loved the scene where she was stealing, like using a thievery trick to give money back to the shop owners. I thought that was terrific. I thought the love story was very well done, especially the moments of intimacy between those two characters. Other than that,
Yeah.
I would like to have my 7 hours back.
That's zero. All right.
Refund on the money, right? Refund on the
I got it from the library.
Oh, okay.
Do we want to do positives or negatives first? Now that we kind of know we've got a divided field. Some people
Can I
loved
just-
it. Some people
Just
hated
a
it.
second, can I
Yeah.
ask the question of Mary? Because you said like in like 2/3 or something you got into the story, but I don't remember what happened around there. Can you say when it was?
I got into it when I thought she was more herself, more she was kinder to herself. She had gone through a lot up until that point, and it just I thought I got to know the real her more. And then also the love interest was starting, and I think that was good. I agree with Laura with that. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I actually had the same experience. I didn't like the first of the book. I actually marked the page where I got into it. 143, I think.
Yeah, it was far in.
The weight of the chest. Yeah. Or it may have been, it's right at kind of, no, it was earlier than that. It was somewhere in the part 2. For me, I went into the book, I read the first chapter where she has 2 godmothers for minor gods. And then we skip from there to her being a master thief. And so I was like, oh, this is an Ocean's 11. She's like a gifted thief who has a master plan. We're going to watch her gather her crew and be a master. That she had experienced trauma. I could have missed it, but that she had experienced trauma and was actually incredibly self-conscious and was not this master thief, had only been free of servitude for under a year, right? It's about a year when the book picks up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About a year.
Yeah, it's about a year. That doesn't get revealed until at least a third of the way in.
That's where I got, yeah.
Yeah, and I spent the first third of the book going like, I don't understand like why this is the way it is. And then they revealed it, and I got a little angry. I was like, oh, you guys tricked me. This isn't the story I thought I was here for. You tricked me a third of the way.
About what?
I thought I was in for a like heist Ocean's 11 thing. I didn't realize I was in a girl just freed herself from slavery and has experienced a life of trauma. And part of that is skipping all of the trauma until the end. Like, I think I would have liked the book a lot better if after she left her godmothers, I had been told right away that they sent her into servitude. Because I imagine like when we pick up with her stealing, I'm like, oh, she's been living with these minor gods out in the woods. They've taught her all these cool skills. We're going to find her Brad Pitt and we're going on a big heist. And then I keep waiting and I'm like, why aren't we going on a big heist? And then finally I hear like, oh, wait, she's not who they made her out to be in the first of the book. She's actually this very different character putting on airs. I would have rather come along for the journey of putting on airs. Like, they don't tell her story of how she becomes the princess until I think the last 60 pages. And I don't know, that didn't resonate with me.
chapter 1 or chapter 2, and I was listening to the audiobook, so my chapters were a little bit funky. At some point I was on chapter 4, but the book itself was on chapter 3. So I don't know if the audio book stopped it in different places, but in that first party scene, she does reveal to us that she's desperate to escape.
Yeah.
So there's some implied trauma from that desperation. But I agree with you. It's not like, especially since it's I think it's tailored to young adults, right? Young adult fiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little bit more subtle than it needed to be in the beginning. I think she might have been a little bit more likable in the beginning if we had understood that this was an armor she was putting on because of the trauma. But
Yeah, and maybe it was just my poor assumption. When she started talking about how desperate she was to escape, I assumed that that was a social class thing. And it is a social class thing, right? Like, I would say the theme of the book is actually social classes suck. Like, that's one of the themes of the book. And so I thought, oh, she's a thief trying to escape because she's got these godmothers, but she's poor. And so she's trying to like which is the theme of every heist movie, right? Like every heist book is all about like, we're poor, we're robbing these banks in order to no longer be poor, right? Like, and
No.
we don't have any morals.
No.
What do you mean no?
I mean, I don't agree. I thought you were going to say the theme of every heist is like, we have to do this one last job to get out of trouble. And that's totally what this is in this.
Yeah,
book.
same thing.
You see that in movies over. It's not the same thing, like wanting to get rich and trying to
the
get out of
answer to
town.
problems in a heist is always getting rich.
Yes. But
They're
it's
the same.
But the problem is not being poor. The problem is almost always like the Godfather's going to kill you, or there's something.
But all of that
going
is
to happen.
all of that is caused by poverty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the problem is being poor. Because if they're not poor, they don't need to rob anything to get out of poverty. The answer to the problem is always money in a heist book.
I thought she was hilarious at the beginning, and I loved her instantly.
I did too. I liked her.
And then that first chapter is a heist. I mean, the whole thing is a heist in chapter 1, and you're like, oh, she is a badass. And then the last sentence is, I'm totally in. So just different things for different people.
But that's what I agree with you. Like, I was totally in, and then I felt like the journey changed on me, and I was like, oh, I wasn't here for this journey. I really wanted the heist journey. I wanted the girl that sees fortune and death and is using it to her advantage to rob from the rich, to like get the riches she needs to get out of town. Like, that's what I was hoping for. But that's not what we got. Like, that's not the story. The story is a girl who was like abused as a servant and who could no longer take the abuse and learned to hate the social class, and that she was being emotionally manipulated by these pearls that her master has. And then she is rising up in a fit of rage about her social class and taking on, in some ways, taking on what her masters, quote unquote, expect her to do. And then like living with the pain of, is this right or is this not right? And like the pain of like, everybody wants me to be a servant. And that was not the book I expected in the first third. But I liked that book. I just wish she had told me that's what I was in for at the beginning. Because I would have read that. I read that book. I liked that book too. But there was a moment of disappointment where I was like, oh, I guess we're not having the fun heist thing. But she pulls it back at the end. You have the heist at the end. Anyway.
And many there were heists like every third chapter. There was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
heist.
Yeah. They're just cloaked in this like different story going on that has a very different emotional resonance. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Somebody else talk. What else what did we like about the book? As opposed to me just droning on.
I would say, like, in terms of this, like this meaning and the themes and all of that, that you say you were surprised by. For me, I really enjoyed how it was always like added on, and it got deeper and heavier as we were going through the story. That dynamic kind of worked for me. But I'm also always, when I like watch or read something, I'm always like so in the story that I don't really build up these expectations, and I'm like thinking ahead and all of that. I'm just like going with the flow. So I didn't have that experience.
Nice. Talk to me about the adding on. Like, was it the plot getting more complicated that you liked, or was it the like continuous rise in challenges that you liked? Like, what was it about when you say adding on, what did you like about that?
I mean, I like that too, but right now I'm meaning like the backstory that came in pieces.
Yeah.
That I don't remember exactly how it went, like in terms of order, but in my head it was like always it had more meaning as we were learning more and more about the backstory and how horrible it actually was.
Gotcha. So you liked the unveiling of the character slowly, where like you learned more about her as the book continued. Nice. That's cool. It felt, have y'all ever read a first person narrative that does that before? This was the first person narrative I've read where you get the story as a slow unveil like that. I'm curious if that's unique to this book or if that's something you've seen.
No, I'm sure I have. I mean, I'm trying to think of like Owen Meany or something like that. I'm having a really hard time with my connection for some reason. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Yeah,
we'll just wait for you to come
I think
back.
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't think of one. I thought it was incredibly unique. I was like having a first person narrative where her story is actually unveiled by other people and she's trying to hide it from the reader. I thought was really interesting. I thought that was an interesting technique to use. I mean, that's what I would kind of interpret what you're talking about, Tania. Is that fair to say that like the narrator's actually hiding her backstory, and as we discover it as everybody else kind of unveils it?
Yeah, well, I think like in her narration, she also like she pretends like she's fiercer and like less raw than she really is, and I think I don't know. I think it comes back to her, or she is more and more. I don't know if ready is the right word, but she is able to go deeper into the pain. So I don't know if, well, I guess it's triggered by the story in the moment. No, I don't have it very clear in my head right now.
Yeah. Anybody else have thought? Well, it is like midnight for you.
Understood her.
Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I agree with Tanya completely. I mean, the voice and Fleabag might be a comparison.
Yeah, Fleabag is a good comparison.
Fleabag's connection with the camera is completely manipulated. And it's the same here at the beginning. She is portraying herself to the person she's telling the story to, because it's first person, it's not third person, it's the person she's telling the story to. And at the beginning, she's talking about how brilliant she is as a thief. And it's not until the end of the book where she can be pretty honest about her feelings. There's many times where she's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to go somewhere else now. I'm going to talk about something else because I'm not ready to go there. And I get what you say, Jeff, about classes, because it definitely is. But I think that was twinned with her still, this sort of idea that no matter how crappy things are, you still have to take responsibility for yourself. And that's what the curse was. So you had this interesting mix of the curse telling her to stop being so selfish. And then all of the facts of her history being like, whew, no wonder she's like this. And I love the reveal. And I'm sure these days I barely read a flap because I just want to not know what's going to be in a book before I start reading it. So
Yeah.
I like the unfolding.
Yeah. The unfolding of her character, although I struggled with it at the beginning, was really well done. Yeah, it was really well done. Anything else we liked about how the book worked?
In the mechanics, I liked all of the clocks.
Talk about that a little bit.
The curse was a nice clock.
Yeah.
Hubert Clemens arriving in a week was a nice clock.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden the wedding was a clock.
Right.
And then in the last quarter of the book, her birthday was a clock.
Mm-hmm.
So you had all of these clocks actually ending at the same point, but they're running at different speeds.
Yeah.
And so in your mind, you're always wondering, okay, I had 2 weeks to get this done. Oh crap, I've got 3 days to get this done. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
I'm just going to say the stakes raise every
Mm-hmm.
50 pages or so. She just raises the stakes and ratchets it a little tighter. And I'm sure we'll get there, but the balance of dialogue and first person narration, I thought was fabulous.
Yeah. I was actually looking before we got on the call. There is not a page. Well, so she has these minus these insertions, because toward the end of the book, she starts doing these fairy tale insertions where she's like giving you backstory in the form of like, once upon a time there were 3 maids, or once upon a time there were 2 maids. And outside of those little sections, there's not a page without dialogue after page 143, which I was really impressed by.
Did
Yeah.
you notice that it has to do with the number of people being added to her
I did
cohort?
notice that. Yeah.
At the beginning, she's all by herself.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so there's lots of monologue.
Lots of
and
monologuing.
then she
Yeah.
adds
Oh.
one person at a time, and you get more and more of these big cast scenes.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with the decreasing of world building. You stop once you're in the story, like once you hit kind of part 2, the world building slows down tremendously. In the first third, there was, and I think that's just a necessary part of fantasy genre. Like, I don't think you can get away from that. But
The only thing, if my only criticism of the book, besides the names, was I thought that first third could have been streamlined so that it got to the meat of it a bit faster.
Yeah, there was a lot of fluff. There was a lot of proving in the first third that she's a great detective, not a great thief. There's a lot of proving in the first third that she knows fancy tricks. Yeah. What's something else that we enjoyed, admired, or struggled with about the book? We're just going to put them all together now. Just going to throw them all together. How do you feel about the side characters? Anybody have a favorite?
Yes.
What'd you say,
Ragnar was-
Robin? I'm sorry, repeat it. I talked over you twice.
Ragnar was hilarious.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to connect with Ragnar, but once I did,
Yeah.
I was, but yeah, it took me a little bit. I actually needed her to meet other people besides the lead character. Once we got a bigger cast in there, I was all in for Ragnar, but when it was just her and the lead character, I struggled a little bit. Yeah. And I'm using the word lead character because she goes by 3 names in the book. So it's yeah.
I think my favorite was Giselle, because they have this very rich history, and there's this huge arc between them that you're like, they can't possibly become friends again, and then in the end they kind of do. But it was really beautiful, and both of them have they're at fault in a lot of ways, they did really horrible things to each other, but they are also kind of tender, each of them. So I like that.
Yeah, I thought Giselle was the best example I've seen in a long time of a character that is somewhat of a villain playing an engine in the story. Because she pushed the lead character to be the best version of herself.
If you take what Tom was saying earlier about trauma, both the lead character and Giselle were both in a really terrible place.
Mhm.
And the trauma that plays out, it's really easy to villainize Giselle, but that's a very, very real reaction to trauma, to turn that pain on someone else to get the direction off of yourself. So I can say that I appreciated the honesty of how the characters came to be.
I think one of my favorite moments was when she asks, if you want to miss spoilers, hit 30 seconds forward. I don't know if we're going to use this as a podcast or not, but just in case. I think one of my favorite moments was when Giselle was like, she was like trying to give her back the pearls, and she was like, you just take your life back. And Giselle was like, no, I don't want it. It was great. It's a great moment.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the same way as I was talking about trauma, the reconciliation between the two of them is so slow and so many false starts that it felt very real to me. They don't just suddenly forgive each other. They keep trying, and then they keep reverting to their defensiveness.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess that's maybe what Tom mentioned. There was so much going on in that book. To me, it was too much. Give me one or two things to deal with, but not the array. But that wouldn't be the fantasy then, and like I said, it'd be interesting. I may read another book of hers. I'm not sure. There's two more, I think.
She's got two more, Merciful Crow and Faithless Hawk.
Right, to see what I think. And I haven't read many books in first person, so that could be the other issue as well. But Tom's right. There's a lot of issues in that, a lot. And I think sometimes, they can get in the way of each other, but that's just my thought.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Merciful Crow is very good, also about class, but much more of a Shadow and Bone kind of teen girl who has powers.
Okay.
And kind of thing. Very, very good. But when I read this, I was just like, I haven't read anything like this.
Okay.
Which made me like it more. But Merciful Crow was very good. But it's also complicated. Tons of world building in that as well. So
Okay.
depends what you like.
Not a lot of world building. So that's I'll stick with this one.
Yeah. Any other side characters we connected with?
Oh, a lot of them were interesting. The butler, I don't remember the names. The love interest, that young kid that she falls in love with. I mean,
she falls in love with the detective.
Yeah. I mean, the author is such a great writer in so many ways. It's just a matter of who her audience is,
Part of what I was really impressed with by the side characters in like her, not just her cohort, but even like, the lead villain, is they all had such complex emotional stories. Every single one of them. The guy that was married, that she's supposed to be forced to marry, the wolf, is even he has this story about like, I'm dying on the battlefield for this king that hates me and like doesn't care about me, and this is my like vengeance on this unfair system in this kingdom, and I've sided with these demon, I don't know what else to call them besides kind of demons from another realm that are like showing up to give me power because everything is unjust and unfair, at the same time being a monster, right? Like he's raping women as he passes them in the castle hallways. But even him's like a very dynamic character, you know, like has a lot of emotional resonance to him, which was interesting. Yeah.
Now that you're talking about him, I realized that I think he kind of pulls off both being frightening and hilarious.
Yeah,
He has this air of like he has all the power and he can't do anything wrong, which is like kind of ridiculous, but also kind of true in this moment.
Yeah, I also think that has to do with what we were talking about, how the narrative voice changes, because when in the first half of the book, when Vanya is not giving any, she's portraying him as an idiot and a fool, and in the second half of the book, as she's starting to really tell us the story, he becomes much more terrifying.
Yeah. And he's never mind, I didn't have anything bad about that. Yeah. Any other thoughts on the characters? Anybody else that stuck out to you that you liked or disliked, or what you'd read a book about this character by themselves?
What was it in the fireplace? What was that being?
Cobalt?
Yeah.
Kept coming out. What was that? Like
he's a curse. Well, he's a curse protection spell that has been cast on the castle so that evil can't come into the castle.
Okay.
And you find out about 2/3 of the way through, half the way through, that our lead character beat the wolf to kind of getting Cobalt on her side. That the wolf assumed that because he was the head of the castle, the fiery protector in the hearth would do what he said.
Okay.
But the lead character kind of charmed the charm.
Oh yeah, she gives him that drink or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
he was a great character, because he's a great hazard character, because he only shows up with one note. He's going to burn things and
Crunch bones
and dispose of things. That's all he does. It's great. It's a great hazard, because you always know that he's there on the kind of on the side. But yeah, it was
it was funny. Remember when he said he couldn't protect each of them, so he had to pick one room. I mean, there were some scenes that were really funny.
Yeah. Another, and this again, just trying to apply, as I was reading the book, trying to apply our terms and like how we think about story. Something interesting about this book is that her first person narrative is her anchor. So she talks herself into the worst version of herself throughout the whole book. Every other character around her is an engine. The detective engine, the Ragna engine, the kids and the woman who like cares for the orphan children, all encouraging her to be the best version of herself. Except, well, I would argue Fortune and Death are also anchors. When they show up, she retreats to the worst version of herself. But they were
great too.
They are great. They're a great pair. Yeah. Tom, talk about what you liked about them.
Well, all the low gods actually are completely like low key, right? They're all chill, and you don't expect that. And then my favorite was when she's saved by Death, and Death's like, "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed," which is like the most motherly thing to say. But no, at the end, when they all show up for the trial, I found all of the low gods to be funny.
Yeah, and that trial scene is beautifully written. That is an amazing big cast scene.
Yeah.
She keeps justice, truth, Death, Fortune, time, and the lead character and the detective all engaged in a conversation at one time. It's really impressive. And she uses, if you want a great example of a chorus scene, she uses those low gods as a chorus, and then every once in a while pulls one of them out and puts them back in. It was really impressive. Yeah, I was really impressed. And I laughed out loud every time Truth spoke, because he's so that is true. It was really funny.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Can we talk about dialogue?
Yeah, Absolutely. I mean, if we have to. Yeah, no, we can totally talk about dialogue.
I wanted to hear what you had to say, especially there were just several scenes that I thought this is perfect, but I couldn't necessarily tell why. And yes, I loved all the big cast scenes, but I can't find it now. But the scene she and Emmerich are together in the room playing the card game and drinking wine. And it's just a two-person scene and it's very long, but it has all sorts of action and body movement. And there's all sorts of things going on. I just felt like she did it really, really well. And I thought I could never keep a two-person scene going that long without ruining it.
Yeah. Anybody else before I just ran? Anybody else want to talk about what they saw?
I agree with Tom. It was a long scene, a long card game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, there's lots of them. So
Yeah.
what? Oh, I'm sorry. Robin, I started talking right over top of you.
I started in that long scene Tom's talking about. I started skimming.
Really?
It's funny. I was into it. I ate it up. I'm actually looking for it.
It's chapter 10, page 125.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking for a good place to pick up. It goes on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of this one scene. So yeah, I'll just pick up in the middle of it because we've read on this before, right? We can read again. So it says, sorry, trying to decide where to start. There's one role I can always fall back on, and that's the helpless gobsmacked yokel. I crumple my face and collapse into the vanity chair, keeping the breath shallow to force the blood to my cheeks. Please, sir, it's not my place to ask where she goes. I'm just her maid. Vanya, he's consulting a little notebook, which was still coffee stained on the edges. Vanya Schmidt, I believe that was the family name they had for you at Castle Falberg. That's my cousin. She got me this job so I could feed my mother. She's sick. Please, sir. Emmerich sighs. Then he reaches over and yanks a bit of gauze off of my cheek. The ruby teardrop twinkles in the firelight. Emmerich flicks the gauze aside and pointedly, and he waits. Shite, I mutter after a moment. Emmerich folds his arms. I should back in the chair with, I slouch back in the chair with a defeated scowl. All right, Junior, when did you know? Ask for 2 reasons. One, that he looks very pleased with himself. That means he's absolutely certain he's made me dead to rights, and I want to know how. The other is that I managed to grab a hairpin from the vanity, and I think I'm ready to start picking at the shackles. So that's just like a piece of this conversation. What did y'all hear or see in there that she's doing with her dialogue? And I'll start. One thing she does brilliantly is she is not afraid. I think a lot of us are afraid to use body language as lines of dialogue. She is not afraid to do that at all. She does it all the time, right? Like, and she paces it on the page like dialogue, right? Like you can see she's pacing out the body language as if it's a line of dialogue. So it gives this feel that the dialogue is still moving, even though technically it's exposition. She also doesn't, the other thing she doesn't do that keeps the dialogue moving really well is she doesn't interrupt segments. So she does not put exposition in, or even a lot of times longer first person POV until she's at the end of a segment. And then she drops it in. Sometimes she'll put it in right in a big transition. Like right there, she changes her pacing of the prose right when she says, all right, Junior, when did you know? And then she takes a pause for 2 big spots of exposition right at the transition of a segment to make you wait on that answer that he's going to give. But she does it all through the book, right? Like, because she could have just said, when did you know? And then his next line is, I confirmed it last night at Orndorff Manor, right? Like, so she's backing up, she's taking the start of one segment, when there's like a cliffhanger, backing it up, giving a couple paragraphs of exposition in that first person narrative, and then starting the next segment, forcing you to like take that beat in the text, which she does it constantly. Like I could turn to any page and find her doing it again.
Another thing I liked about Vanya's how she did her voice was the pacing, and Vanya has to have the last word, and it's so evident in this every exchange. I love when he says, "Need I remind you which of us is wearing the manacles right now?" And she says, "Oh, I think I get it now," I announced with an air of discovery. "You're what happens when an encyclopedia wishes on a star to be a real boy, if that encyclopedia was also an absolute prick."
Yeah.
And every time he gets the best of her, she says something juvenile and hilarious.
Yeah, there's also an interesting thing between her and Ragna, where Ragna's voice also wants the last word. So there's several conversations between her and Ragna where they're kind of going, the conversation's over and they're still just talking. No new information is being added. They're just like, right. And usually it ends with Ragna going to sleep. Like that's usually how the conversation ends. She's like, all right, I'm going to sleep now. Yeah.
I thought she did an excellent job of modulating Vanya's voice, especially as she was changing who she was, right? Like she was always Vanya, but she was Vanya as Giselle, or she was Vanya as the princess, or right? Like I thought she did a really good job of holding that core.
Yeah, I like, she also uses her first person narration to comment on the modulation, which I think is a nice technique. She uses, so like, I'm thinking specifically about times where she's at parties with the wolf, or when she like plays innocent girl, like the wolf is about to poison her and she's playing innocent girl. Her first person POV stays in her normal voice and comments on what she's doing with her side voice. It's a really interesting thing to do with the first person, using first person narration to bring the reader into the trick you're playing with your own voice. I think is really interesting.
It's interesting that you enjoyed that technique so much, because TJ Klune uses it for his main character as well, and you really enjoyed it there.
I did too. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he does it too. Where the character comments on their own voice all the time. It's really nice.
so if you want Jeff to endorse your book, use first person narration.
Have a highly
Comment.
self-aware character that talks about how they talk. Yeah.
Yep.
Jeff likes
I
the
feel
meta
like
talking about how they talk.
I feel like it's not just about self-awareness and commenting, but there's almost always like a conflict between the things she really thinks or really wants to say and but doesn't. I think that's, I don't know exactly what it does to a reader, but I think it maybe makes it more dynamic or something.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I think it plays on so much of how so many of us feel, that like the things that we want to say, we're so highly conditioned to not say the things that we're thinking and say the things that are right or the things that are going to be accepted, that to see someone else struggle with it is very like, it helps us align with them. Like, yep,
Yeah.
I felt that way. I wanted to say that in that space, and that's not what I said. I said what they said. I think it creates a sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
I also like that because her character progress takes so long and has so many false starts. Every time I speak, it freezes because her camaraderie takes so long and has so many false starts that she keeps catching me with unexpected things where you think, oh, this is where she's gonna like soften it. Instead, she'll harden, and it'll get me. Robin's shaking his head. There's a great scene way over at 4:15 where it's internal narrative, and she's talking about all the things she's gone through. And she says, and if you saw me now sleeping by a fireplace, giving up everything for Giselle, letting new people into my heart, daring even an ember of hope, well, only a fool would look at me now and think I had learned anything at all. And it's just like, she just goes the other way. And I thought that was a good trick. I liked it. I like tricks.
It's also but it's also an interesting unreliable narrator thing, because she clearly has learned a lot of things, right? Like, again, it's that, like what you mentioned, or I think Tiana mentioned before, is that like there's she's lying to herself all throughout the book, which is an interesting, yeah. By lying to the reader, she's lying to herself all the way through. All right, anything else about the book we want to talk about?
I was just, because we were talking about Ragna, who I love, and I also love easy dialogue tricks. And all she had to do to make Ragna seem foreign was to the in front. It instantly made her unhuman or different. I just thought it was brilliant. So she refers to the Vanya and the Giselle.
Yeah.
And I just love to see people like figure out a little trick that carries a lot of weight.
You went off when you said
Oh.
your thing.
Now, yeah, I'm having the worst
No,
time
but
today.
that one thing you wanted to share, we didn't
Oh.
get.
Oh, that's
Wait.
okay.
No,
Don't worry
repeat it again. What were you saying
Yeah,
about
what
Ragna's
was the
voice?
trick?
Oh, about Ragna's voice is that
Yeah.
I can't tell because you're all just looking at me. I do apologize. My connection's been bad all day. That Margaret Owen makes Ragna seem inhuman simply by adding the article "the" in front of other
Okay.
people's names.
Okay.
It's such a simple trick, and it works so great. But every time she refers to the Giselle or the Vanya, it just crystallizes her character for me. And I love when people do little tricks like that carry a whole lot of work, that do a lot of work for the story.
Oh, guys, you're going to make me read this over again. You know that, don't you? At some point. Where's Laura? Save me, Laura.
Not worth it, Mary. There's more stuff to read.
I really thought, Laura, that we were going to be on the same side this time, although I don't know why. We never are.
Tom. Have we been on the same side of anything?
But I thought, there's so much action. There's so much going on.
No, there was too much. There's too much dead space in the beginning that by the time I wanted to be interested, I was already.
You're tired.
I was already done. I couldn't. There was like no redeeming it at the end. And don't get me wrong, I love a good young adult story. Like, I don't need it to not be predictable. So, for example, Wednesday, the new Netflix series, I saw the end from the beginning, but I was there for the story, right? Like, I didn't get every detail, wasn't able to predict every detail of where the story was going, but I didn't enjoy the ride of having it revealed to me the way, because I feel like I imagine most adults feel as they read a young adult, where the beginning sets up the end and you kind of know where it's going. At least I find that for most cases in a young adult book, they kind of lay it out that way. I wasn't there for it this time. And it had so much potential, right? Like death and fortune, a child raised by death and fortune. Like,
Boy, that's a story.
that's amazing. I loved the curse. I loved the idea that a human can turn, especially death and fortune's child, to be cursed this way. I thought that there were so many opportunities for so many high points, and then it just fell short so many times for me. Mary, does that help? You know?
Yeah. I'm right with you. Yeah.
There were
wanted to
scenes.
like
Yeah, there were scenes that were like this.
beautiful. Right.
If you could pull these like 7
Just
scenes.
give me that. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
give me the 1, 2 check. Look at you. Poor Tom. Sorry, Tom.
It's good times.
Tom,
used to.
one day we will find a book. The holy grail that you
never
and
gonna
I
happen.
agree
It's
on.
never gonna happen.
I'm telling you, the book that I recommended to Jeff for next month is the book.
Oh, no, you're doing, which one? Which one? did you
It's
recommend?
90 pages.
Okay, but what's it
It's-
called?
It's a Neil Gaiman book. She's not gonna like it.
Neil Gaiman. Oh, I probably, but that's okay.
He's very British, Laura.
No.
Or we have to start our own book club. No, I'm.
Oh yeah, never mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
No, part of what I love about this, about discussing books like this, is that we all come with very different perspectives on what we like and don't
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, he did Good Omens. No, I'm probably not gonna like that.
Well, we have to try it.
Good Omens is an
Yeah.
amazing book.
Oh, here we go. No, the book I recommended, which you don't have to pick, but I just want to plug it for anyone who's looking for a great audio. It's a middle grade, so it's not YA. It's aimed at like 10 and 12-year-olds, and it's called Fortunately the Milk. And it's about a guy who his kids run out of milk at breakfast, so he goes down to the corner shop to get milk, and he comes back 3 hours later, and they're like, "What the hell happened, Dad?" And there's space aliens, there's vampires, there's pirates, there's time travel, it's great, and it's all
Oh, yeah, lost him.
Neil Gaiman narrates it in his very British voice, so you might want to read it instead. But it's a ton of fun if you're just looking for something to pick up. It's a 2-hour read at tops, not even. So
Can you
I
repeat
at
do
the title?
love a
3.6
good
speed,
middle
Laura, it's
grade.
probably
Huh? What, Laura?
I was gonna say I do love a middle grade vampire novel, or I prefer zombies to vampires, but you know.
Tom, what was the title again?
it's called Fortunately the Milk. And you know, Laura, if you listen to it on 3.5 speed, it's only going to take you like 18
20
minutes.
minutes. Yeah. He's so fast.
Yes, that is my kind of story. But he's British though, so if I listen to it on 3 point speed, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it 4 times because
Right.
I know they're speaking English. I
It's
just
hard.
don't get it. I can't. My brain doesn't speak English.
I know. I have a hard time.
I want to, like, I know the problem is me and not an entire country of people. I get that I can take responsibility for my own inability here, but I will, in the spirit of finding the story that we can both agree on, Tom, I will try it.
And then we can have our own book group, and then if we both like it, then maybe we can.
We're having-
If we both like it, I think we have cracked the case on how we can.
It's really funny. Yeah, if you both like it, I promise to show up and just to be the devil's advocate.
Right, I hated this.
So
This was
do think
garbage.
that if we both like it, we're going to like it for very different reasons.
I think if we both like it, a black hole is going to open up and swallow the world.
All of the book club.
Uh-oh, maybe I shouldn't read it. I don't want a black hole to open up.
It's funny. Oh man. Okay, any more thoughts on Little Thieves? Anything we haven't talked about that you're dying to talk about? With
Great
Margaret Owen?
cover.
Oh, the I'm serious. The hardback, it's worth getting and reading because it is beautiful. It is a beautifully paged book.
By the way,
mhm.
I checked out the author's website,
Yeah.
and like it seems like I don't know if she drew the images for this book, but she did like her own character art and stuff.
Oh,
So it's
interesting.
really good.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Here, I've
She's
got it
like
open.
talented in many ways.
Yeah, she's got a whole page on her website of art that she's done, which is pretty cool. Oh, can y'all see that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
She's got her Captain America, I want to punch Nazis. It's awesome. I'm here for it. Yeah. Very talented. All right. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for
Bye. Thank you.
thanks for a great book. Book club.
Book club,
Yeah,
great book club.
great book club. Yeah.
Can't stop a great book.
Can't stop it. Tom, my favorite thing about your mic going out, Tom, is that every time it went out in a very like Vanya way, where you'd be like, the most important thing is
It was every time I spoke, which means it had to be like my mic is causing too much. I don't know. Had to be something.
but it would
yeah.
it would wait for just the right
Yeah.
time.
It's like in Ocean's 11 when
Yeah.
he says, and remember, no matter what.
No matter what. Yeah. It was like the thing about Ragna's voice that was most amazing is that she oh no, I have to know. Yeah, anyway.
I live in a house with old
It happened again.
plaster walls and the Wi-Fi is just
You do. You live in a house with what?
old
Plaster
plaster walls.
It totally stopped right
And-
there. You go,
Yeah, I
the
know.
thing is, I live in a house with
Yep.
monsters.
The Wi-Fi is terrible.
demons? What's happening?
Kobolds.
Little wolves coming out of the
Anyway.
fireplace.
I gotta go, you guys, but
Bye.
thanks. One of the things I like about book groups is quite often when I don't like a book, I end up liking it more after hearing why other people liked it. So I hope those of you who hated it, I pulled you a little closer to the
No,
middle.
I didn't say I hated it. Laura didn't say she hated it. I don't think.
It's pretty close.
But I think pretty close. But Mary,
Appreciate the art of
yeah,
it.
I think you
I
keyed
really
in
enjoyed
exactly, Mary, to it in that like different people like different kind of books.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but this is totally my jam with a multi-layered.
Well, you write crime
lots of
novels too,
reveals.
and the whole thing's a crime novel.
The whole thing is
Yeah.
a crime novel, but I also was impressed with. I liked the emotional weight added to it, where you felt like you were broadsided by it.
Once I got, and I will say, once I knew once I knew the journey we were on, I was 100% in. I just had a moment where I was like, wait, what's happening? Like, this isn't what I think it goes into like reader expectations. Like, it's when your reader gets a certain expectation, if you screw with that, it can have great consequences or it can have terrible. And for me, it was not. I put it down and walked away from it for like 2 weeks. And then I came back to it where I was like, okay, this is a different story than I thought I was reading. And now I'm in for the story I am reading, but I felt cheated.
It's something I've had to learn because the indie book world, they're like, if you defy reader expectations, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And like I, as a reader, and I've read a shit ton of books, like I don't care that much about genre.
Yeah. I'm usually not a genre guy either. I do think though, like part of it too, well, I was just reading The Anatomy of Genre this morning, which is a fascinating read. And one of the things he says is that all books in the future will have to mix genre. He's like, readers are done with a single genre, which I don't know if that's true or not. But
Not yet.
and he does say in the beginning, he's like, if you mix genres that that people aren't expecting to go together, there might be an adverse reaction. And that's what happened to me with this book. Is I was in for Good Time Heist, and all of a sudden we're talking about social class and serious matters. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting social class and serious matters in my Good Time Heist story. But I just had to get over it. I had to like step away from it and come back. And then I really loved it. And that has nothing to say about the craft. The craft is
Right.
impeccable. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Just before you go, I remembered that I wanted to ask you guys something because this book was based on like a fairy tale, right? And I knew it
Oh,
quite well, but I didn't know if you guys also knew it because to me, like obviously I have this added layer of like references to the fairy tale.
what fairy tale is based on? I had no idea.
The Goose Girl.
Oh, no, I had no clue.
And I think that's maybe why she picked that sort of language, because she was sort of setting it in Grimm's world.
No,
But
I
like, so
didn't-
you didn't know the original
Would
story.
it help to read The Goose Girl? Maybe.
No, I don't
No.
think so.
Mhm.
no, I did not know the Goose Girl.
No,
That's
I
really
don't know
interesting.
about that
Me
one. Yeah.
neither. Nope.
Yeah,
I think
That's
it's a bit more obscure.
yeah, that's cool.
Thanks for staying up so late, Tanya.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's good
Thanks
seeing
for joining
everybody.
us. Yep. All right, y'all. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.